Are you still carrying around shame from something that happened at work, maybe even years ago, where you got emotionally triggered and then you just lost it on someone? I've got one of those stories, and I bet you do too. Stay tuned for another great episode of Bad Boss Confessional. Hi, I'm Beth Fahey, and welcome to Bad Boss Confessional. I've been a leader for over 30 years, and I'll be honest, I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. The thing is, those mistakes taught me more about leadership than any success ever did. This podcast is where we get honest about the moments we'd rather forget and discover why they're the ones that are actually worth remembering. Each week, I talk with leaders who aren't afraid to share their worst boss moments and what they learned from them. Because here's what I know: every great leader has a story they're not proud of. This is where we tell those stories. Today's guest is Mary Pat Knight, author of the international bestseller, The Humanized Leader, and CEO and founder of Leaders Inspired, a global training and development firm dedicated to personal and leadership transformation. Mary Pat believes that when inspired leaders inspire others, they have the capacity to change the world. Welcome, Mary Pat.
Hey, Beth. Glad to be here.
It's so good to see you. It's been a few years.
Yeah, I know. And we had some regular interaction, and then we both got super, super busy. And now let's make a little bit of busy time to be with each other. That would be fun. I'm glad I'm here. Yeah,
So, for our listeners, would you mind just covering a little bit about your history as a leader yourself up until this point?
sure. I'm happy to. I started my career as an actor. Did you know that?
I think we talked about this
Yeah, I started
maybe.
my career as an actor. And the only reason I say that at the beginning is because leaders have to understand the human condition in order to lead well. And my acting background and my acting training actually provided that to me to be able to really become a super fan of what makes human beings tick. And so I carried that into my corporate career and my entrepreneurial career. And I did some sidetracking, like they went side by side for a long time. But I was what I call a whippersnapper, and I love when I find whippersnappers in my coaching practice because they're the people who said, "I don't really know how to do this, but I'll do it anyway." So I started off with director level positions, and I grew from there, predominantly in the hospitality industry, in the restaurant and hotel industry, and then along the way started a marketing agency. As I morphed into human development, I started a coaching and consulting practice. And then finally, here I am in for the rest of my life doing the type of humanized leader coaching that I think is really going to change the world.
Did you start out right out of the gate as a great boss, Mary Pat?
No, and as a matter of fact, when you reached out to me to do this, and I love the idea of this podcast and those that you have produced before have been entertaining and painful at the same time. I immediately knew what my bad boss moment was, and it happened very early in my career, and it did set a tone and a trajectory for the rest of my career. So I no, I was a really bad boss at the beginning.
Oh, well, okay. You have to tell us the story now.
Uh-huh. I cringe when I think about it, and it's been a source of shame and humor, and shame again and humor again. But really, really early on, I think you'll appreciate this because you came up in a family business. So this was a made up family business because it was a troupe of actors, singers and dancers, and hoofers that were entertaining. Back in the day, I was like 19 years old, and I was named the managing director as well as one of the entertainers. So you see the blur? You see the blur
Mhm,
there?
mhm,
It's
mhm.
very, very family, very overly familiar with each other, but I had to be an authority figure. So one day, this young, beautifully talented man was challenging my authority. And as a young boss, relying on positional authority, that's the death knell. And I had had enough. And he had plucked my last nerve, and he had said one sly thing to me too many. And I literally walked into the green room and I threw stuff and I looked at him and I cursed him out using the most horrible language ever in front of everybody. It was horrifying. Silence fell over the room. His face became ashen, and I realized, "Oh, crud. Look what I just did. I just took everybody out." I wanted to be totally, wholly justified because he was really being a pain in the butt. I wanted to be totally, wholly justified, but I absolutely knew in the moment, wow, I really messed up. And it's carried. I mean, I'm well much older than 19 years old, but this has followed me through my career as a real pivotal moment of truly bad management.
Mm. So, looking back, what do you think it was that triggered you in that moment?
I did not have an ounce of leadership training. I mean, I've had natural leadership. I mean, I'm the oldest kid and was running all the things and did all the things. But being the oldest kid, running all the things, doing all the things is bossy. It's bossy. It's not leadership. And so I didn't have any notion, and I'm really happy to say that, as my career progressed, I had incredible mentors and incredible role models of leadership that helped shape me, but I had nothing. So I walked into a situation with a title. And this is where, and especially when I work with people who are developing young managers, I say to them, beware of the boss that now has a title that you've not mentored into leadership, because what they will rely on, which is what I did, they will rely on positional power. I have the title, so you by right have to follow me, pay attention to however I boss you around, and do what I say. But I also think because I didn't have any leadership training, or any communication training, which all happened later, I had no idea how to set the boundaries, do clear communication, be clear in my expectations, and then follow up in a way that didn't make me look like a jerk, using my title to boss people around. So I think I go back and I'm like, all right, I did not have leadership training. However, I did have empathy and common sense. I also didn't really have emotional regulation back then. I mean, I was all over the place. I was 19 years old trying to live my life. I had no emotional regulation. So you put all of that together, and someone who's, and this guy was picking at me. I can honestly say that, not from a victim place, from a truthful place. He was picking at me. I had nothing inside in a moment where my fuse got short to stop me. So I just went. I exploded. Ooh, I hate
Oh,
talking about it.
yeah. No, so in Great Boss workshops, I share these stories all the time. And there's one I have that's very similar, except unfortunately I was much older.
Oh. I probably have a couple in my pocket from much older too, but this is the one that came to me as when I thought about it.
When people have your number, and it sounds like that guy did,
You knew what my triggers were, absolutely.
and they kind of play you like a fiddle a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. And carrying that around, that shame, for sure. I still think about I mean, I can probably count on both hands incidents where I'm just like, "Oh, geez, what was I thinking? How could I have been so unempathetic or so righteous in my conviction or politicking like I was? And what was that about, you know?"
The work that I do always begins with finding emotional leadership. That's like the baseline of everything. And so that's what I call emotional regulation, is when you understand triggers and the drama triangle, how change management all wraps up in there. All of that is there. But the one thing that will derail any good learning around emotional regulation is shame. It just comes and grabs you by the throat. I mean, do you ever have this doesn't happen very often anymore, but I went through a period of time in my life where I would go to bed thinking about all the crappy things I had done. And the shame would just grab me. And it's kind of like, I wanted to like hurt myself somehow by remembering all these crappy things. But the shame absolutely derailed me from moving forward, into the next wonderful thing in my life, until I learned how to deal with the shame and know that it's just a trigger, and put some strategy in place to, you know, lessen it, to mitigate it. But shame makes people do wonky things. It really does.
It's usually tied to something that happened when you were younger, something that you're protecting, and you can almost always wind it back to a moment when you were 7, you know?
Which Yeah, you can do that with any trigger, frankly, Beth. If you are experiencing a trigger and you really want to not have that trigger anymore, if you do a little bit of deep introspection and you do, do a lifeline and wind it back, you're generally going to find at least a reason why you keep having that trigger over and over again. So I've had this phrase pop up and I heard it years and years ago. I had no idea where it came from, so I did some research and it's actually attributed to St. Francis of Assisi. But he has a phrase that I've been talking to my clients about it recently. It's so interesting. And the phrase is wear the world like a loose garment. And I think as we mature and we get more emotionally stable, we're able to weather those triggers or those memories, or I'm even able to come on here and tell you this story that I feel immensely or have felt immensely ashamed about, and not let it corset me into a spiral of shame. I can wear that really loosely, knowing that it really has served me for a lot of my life and my career.
Sure. And it propels you forward and it makes you successful and it does all kinds of good things for you,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
except that, at some point it exhausts you.
yeah. Until you're willing to forgive yourself, realize the lesson, forgive yourself, and wear it like a loose garment. Like this is just something that was a part of me and it doesn't have to be attached to me.
So let's talk about your work a little bit because, we've had several lunches and we've talked about we orbit in the same universe, not exactly the same thing that we do. Can you talk a little bit about how you work with leaders and leadership teams and what value you bring to them?
Yeah. So the humanized leader system, which is what the book was written about, I've done this for like informally for 30 years, formally for at least 20. So I systematized with the thought processes, and I have to give an homage to all of my teachers that came before me because this is a compilation of the learning, you know, from early on to now. It's a compilation of what they taught me, what I took away from it, what I've practiced, what I've seen, and what I've taught. So I bring a system into an organization, or I bring a system into executive coaching that allows human beings to leverage emotional intelligence, learn it and leverage it, and accelerate their um, ability to be present and relational um, with themselves and with their teammates or with the people that they're leading and managing. Communication gets really sharp, and it's sharp not like with a sword, it gets sharp in terms of love and precision. And love is an operative word here. I think it's an important word in this work, and I use it freely. And I tell people the L word's coming. Just warning, the L word's coming. And then we take a look at then the next overlay of that. I'm giving you actually the four frameworks of the system: emotional leadership, communication leadership. The third is performance leadership, and I think that's sometimes where we can forget the two that came before, the emotional leadership and the communication leadership, because the performance leadership is about producing results. And as a leader, I think what I like to do to work with my people coaching and in the teamwork that I do, because I do quite a bit of team training, is to help them to understand that, yeah, you have your own responsibility for performance. You are not completely responsible for the performance of others, but you are responsible for creating an environment where they want to perform. And so that is the key lesson, and that's through agreements and clear expectations and appropriate feedback and all of the things that can really get positionally weird if you're not careful. And the last part of the system is living in your genius, which is bringing joy back to work, bringing the joy of you producing at the highest level that you can produce without a quid pro quo of reward. It's just because for the joy of it, and then teaching others to be in that space as well. So I take people through a six-part plus 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 system because a lot of people bring me plus 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 to work with their teams after the six-part system. Or I do an executive coaching engagement, which actually draws upon these things that I've just shared with you. And the end result is transformation in some way, shape, or form. It's really quite individual. What I see with the teams is common language. Um, they really love and respect each other. They're having fun. They laugh. I teach a lot about the drama triangle. So villain, victim, and hero becomes common lexicon, and they laugh as they discover it with each other. And then my leaders, they get easy. I mean, and easy is not like lazy, but they get easy with themselves. And then they're able to produce in a way where they draw other people to them and then the results happen.
So I love how that ties to what we were talking about earlier. Wear the world like a loose garment. They're wearing the company or the team like a loose
Yeah,
garment.
yeah,
It sounds
yeah.
like at the end.
Yeah,
That's neat.
I think it's that's why it's just a short theme right now, and then the next theme will come, a couple months from now. But it's a short theme right now, and it seems to be appropriate for many of the people that I'm working with. And we're all wound up right now. The world is wound up right now, Beth. You know that the world is wound up. No political. This is not political, but the world is wound up. It's post COVID. There's a lot of political friction. There's a lot of rhetoric happening on both sides of the equation, and our leaders are really feeling it because they are also called upon to be, what I wasn't as a bad boss, the stabilizing factor for the team. And that's kind of a big responsibility. So there's got to be some good self care, self awareness, a willingness to self develop. That's got to be present. In other words, unless you want to just implode.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting right now. And you can feel it like in session rooms. I'm sure you can feel it when you're working with teams. It's the unsaid thing, the sort of tension underneath everything right now. And I think what's gets me about it right now, and we're both on the same page. I mean, you've got a book called The Humanized Leader. I'm teaching a course, a workshop, called How to Be a Great
How to be a
Boss,
great boss. Yeah.
and so much of what I'm teaching is about really looking at people as another human. Like, this is another human being sitting in front of you. They have the same wishes, desires, frustrations with their kids, problems with their parents. I mean, we're all so much alike in so many ways. And unfortunately, we're falling into a low EQ place of division, and I just wonder, how can leadership survive in this kind of climate?
Intentionally being in a place of empathy, love, and compassion. I mean, it's and all of the skills that you teach and all the skills that I teach really point people in that direction. People who are deeply listened to feel seen and heard. People who receive feedback that is positively intentioned rather than critical feel that they can make a change. People who receive coaching feel supported. I mean, all of the things that you teach and all the things that I teach, it's really important that the leaders learn and do and then role model to their next level leaders, or bring in someone like you or me, or others who are doing this work out there to teach their next level leaders, um, to get off their positional thrones and really lead from lead from the heart, lead from the heart.
Yeah, as we say, put the love in it.
Yeah, put the love in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that brings me to ask the question, like, what's the most common? I mean, I know, like, there's a handful of issues that I see all the time in a session room regarding a company in at this moment in time. When you're working with a team, what would you say the most common issues that appear are?
A perception of a lack of accountability. And I say perception because there's not always a lack of accountability. Sometimes the accountability is wrapped up in engagement. But accountability is a big issue. And I think humanizing that, this is what I said with the third platform of the humanized leader is, I can't hold you accountable, but I really can create an environment where you choose to be. So accountability is a big issue. Communication, cross communication, missed communication, communication that doesn't land, is another big issue. And then there's also the thing that pops up, which is which we all have, which is why I think your podcast is so timely and spot on. Is do I have what it takes to lead? Do I have what it takes to lead this team? And I'm not trying to oversimplify this, Beth, because I think the work is hard. People call it soft skills, and it makes me laugh because there's nothing soft about this. Some of the hardest work you'll ever do. I know you are a student and a lover of personal development as well. And you know the digging deep and the doing of the personal development is not easy. It is so rewarding.
Yeah, the work on yourself. I mean, that there's in the last few years since we've talked last or had lunch together last, I've explored like Byron Katie. I've gone on my own journey with a coach. All these things in my late 50s when, right, I should have this all figured out. But
Oh, look at you, should. You know that's a shame word. You know that's a
yeah.
shame word, right?
Oh yeah.
Should. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I
Got to
mean, I
bust you.
grew up Catholic, Mary Pat.
I know, me too. Come on, we're gonna do the Catholic
Like,
duel.
are you kidding? This is a confessional. Like, what do you think I'm working through here?
I get it now.
I think if you make the choice, and it is a choice to do the work, you're halfway there.
Yeah, I think actually that's a criteria, and I don't know if you have. It's an unstated criteria for me, but I know immediately when I'm having, a first conversation with someone who might be interested in my work, um, whether they're halfway there or not. And if you're halfway there, I want you. I want to work with you. Let's get over the finish line together. If you are not, and sometimes when I work with the teams, there's one or two people who are not and don't want to be. And a lot of times they pop out. I mean, if the organization says, no, we are really focused on developing emotional intelligence as an organization, or, a culture of engagement and inclusion, or whatever it is, and there's one or two people who are like digging their heels in and they're not going to do it. A lot of times when I do this work with them, they pop out of the organization. They're just not there at the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have the same very similar criteria. It in EOS we call it willingness. Are they willing to do the work? There has to be a bit of surrender in that willingness. And if they're not willing to surrender to the system, surrender to learning, EOS or any other operating system that you put into your company is not going to work because humility is key.
Yeah. And I would say that one of the delights of my life right now, which is why this is all I'm going to do for the rest of my life, is that my clients to a T, to the last person, all possess that willingness to, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually develop. And it is so fulfilling to work with people who are in that space.
So let's talk about the drama triangle. I know we've explored this a little bit, but this is especially prevalent in family businesses, which I have a lot of clients that are family businesses. I know you have too. Can you just give us a broad overview for our listeners who have never heard of the drama triangle before?
The drama triangle is the dysfunctional leadership behaviors of villain, victim, and hero. And so, very brief overview, the villain is the critical kind of bullying character that has a secret weapon of being able to see the defect and see it quickly, and also has dysfunction when they don't want to own any part of the solution and they'd rather blame and shame you for the problem to begin with. So there's power, authority, and control as part of that. So do you think that might have been part of my original Bad Boss story, that I could have been a little villainy? I think so. And when I retell it, I sometimes go to this next character, which is the victim, which says, it happened to me. Outside of me, it happened to me. They made me do it. I am powerless and helpless and somewhat hopeless. And I don't think I should be called to be accountable because I don't know enough and I don't have enough power, and I need to hide a bit and stay safe. And sometimes I hide in the group with other victims, and we get very gossipy. And this happens in a family business for sure. All right, but there's always somebody. The underdog is down and under and hiding in that kind of victimy, hopeless position. So you have a villain who's always looking for the victim, and the victim looks for the villain because it reinforces their story. And then you have the hero, and the hero swoops in to save the day. I sometimes rename the hero the enabler because they enable the behavior of the villain and the victim because they keep it going. All right. But the hero, who also, the villain sees the problem, secret weapon. The victim is able to tell a really good story, which we want to teach them to tell a different story. And the hero wants to be of good service, but they end up going awry. And the going awry involves the quid pro quo. Say that 6 times fast. The quid pro quo of, if I do it, you will recognize me. If I do it, I will be important and indispensable to this organization. So I'll fix all the things. I know all the things, and I'm going to pat you on the head if you're feeling blue, and I'm going to speak for you if you're being a big villain. So I'm all powerful. And so those are the three characters. You can pick which one you fall into. I can do all three. I gotta tell you, in my lifetime, if you're dealing with my kids, I'm hero mom. If I'm telling the story about being a bad boss right now, I could go to victim in a minute. And you saw my story about being a villain for sure. Yeah, we can go to all three in a minute. But there is a transformation, and that's the hope of it. And I think a lot of people just learn the drama triangle, and they're like, oh well, then I can go home and tell my husband he's a big villain, or whatever. Please don't do that. The transformation happens through coaching and listening and feedback and silence and all the things that you teach and I teach, to help someone as a villain understand that they have contribution to, once they see the problem, to becoming a part of solving the problem. So the coaching is get out of the bad dynamic or the poor dynamic of communication and get into collaborating for result, for an outcome, for a better outcome. And then the victim gets coached to saying, look, you've got momentum going in the wrong direction here. You've got momentum going into the hopeless pit. What if we reframed this a little bit and we found one piece of momentum that got you into a more empowering story? So if you created one story, you can create another. Now, I believe there's some of this, I've taught this for years, but some of this was also recreated, I think, in the empowerment dynamic. So this could be familiar for
The
any of.
Power of Ted.
Yeah, Power of 10, yeah, uh-huh.
Mhm.
So, and I also think Michael Bungay Stanier wrote about some of it in The Coaching Habit as well. I'll say I've been teaching it forever, but we're all aligned, okay? So now let's go to the hero, which most of us align with, because we're the leaders, the bossy ones, the people who are making things happen. And when I do a class, I have people guess, and generally more than half the room raises their hand for hero, and I have to inform them that it's really the worst one. Hero's the worst one.
Say more about that.
Well, think about this because we're going to talk about the transformation in a moment. If I go into your organization, well, even pretend I'm a consultant and I go into your organization and I start doing all the things, what do I create in your organization? Dependence. Yeah, I create dependence. What else do I create for your team?
Uh, you're hamstringing them from
Yeah,
developing.
exactly. They can't
Yeah.
become critical problem solvers. They're not going to think for themselves. And then who ultimately holds all the accountability? Me. Me. So I literally cripple the organization depending on how big of a hero I'm trying to be. So you see, it's the worst one. It's the worst one. But there is a way out from this. And I think this is really the work that we do. And this is really the work of leadership. And I'm seeing it more and more and more in the things that I'm reading lately from some of our big speakers like Sinek and Brene Brown is, yeah, you were once a manager. You're now a leader. Now you must be a coach. And the hero morphed into a coach has tremendous impact in the organization because since they're so knowledgeable, since they're so studied, since they know where all the bones are buried, they really can go in and coach and teach and mentor other people to stand next to them in their genius. So that's the transfer. That's the drama triangle, and that's the transformation.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for that description. I think that you're gonna get a lot of people wanting to read more about it. I know you've got a whole chapter of it in the book, The Humanized Leader, and I think that, there's tons of stuff out there, but it's so deep and it's such a simple framework, but once somebody shows it to you, you can't help but see it all the time.
So this is interesting. You're using a word that's really important, and I think the leaders who are listening here might take note of this. And I saw it early on in in EOS and what the early work that Gino Wickman did to put traction together. He created frameworks which were easy for people to look at and to understand and to implement. And so I'm taking a page from his book. And, when I wrote this book, it finally gelled into the frameworks. And so I generally teach from a place of a framework right now because it shortcuts your brain or your cognitive dissonance. It shortcuts something inside of you that doesn't want to learn it because it's just so glaringly obvious. So those of us who, and you don't want to make this rote and not meaningful. It's got to be meaningful, but if you're able to put something into a system or a framework, people are going to be able to logically follow the thing that you're trying to lead them to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, visual representations of things are super powerful. I mean, I personally learn best from seeing something, a diagram, a framework, then my brain can do whatever the spatial gymnastics that it needs to do to understand and to anchor a lot of the ideas,
Yeah,
right?
no, that's true. And so you think about even going into a whole another field of lean, the whole lean movement or lean HR or lean manufacturing, any of them. There's always visual representation, which summarizes the framework. And then there's the audio, and then there's the kinesthetic. I mean, you have all three come together. But I'm kind of like you too. Show me the picture as you're describing it to me, and I'll be able to understand it and do it. You know.
Right, exactly. So, what's next for you? Are you working on another book by any chance or
I am. However, just like this first one, I drug my feet kicking and screaming to finally get it published. I'm kind of in the same mindset. I've got a couple of directions that I can go in. I'm really looking at the elevated concept of, uh, and I've been looking at it for the last couple of years, of the place that wisdom has in leadership, which is, even a step beyond emotional intelligence, step beyond some of the stuff that I am teaching. And I have a couple of clients right now who are really calling me to teach the material in a very different way. Um, and so it's kind of cool. I don't know what will happen with it, but um, tentatively titled "The Wisdom of the Leader," and yes, I have secured the title. So um, is that. And then I also have a book that I actually it's already created, but I haven't figured out how I want to launch it yet. And it is Daily Meditations for the Humanized Leader. And so I've got 185 of them. So I need to do, if I want to do a whole year, I got some more to do, or maybe I just do 5 days a week, whatever. But I've created a series that is um, a thought, and generally it's a thought from me that actually might have come from a third party resource, um, some thoughts about it, and a little bit of instructional action to take after you meditate. And it's kind of cool. Again, I'm working on it.
Yeah, I mean, meditation is such a great tool to have in your toolbox. And I think finally it's catching up. It seems to be. When I first started my EOS practice, and I would say, okay, everybody, we're going to do some box breathing before we get started. They'd look at me
People are
like,
like, what?
who is this nut? You
Yeah.
know,
No, I love that you did that, and I love that you did that early on, and I know that you know that when if I go back to my story that I shared with you at the beginning, part of the reason I went into the rage and said the horrible, horrible things that I said to the person who was in front of me is that I was not grounded. I was like my energy was up in space somewhere. I was not grounded, and meditation and box breathing and that kind of stuff just creates solid grounding. Gives you time and space to make the better choices.
yeah, I mean, you've got to reset the limbic system. And it's such a great tool to keep in your back pocket, that box breathing. You breathe in for 3 seconds, hold it for 3 seconds, exhale for 3 seconds, hold your breath again. So for those of you that don't know what box breathing is, you can use it at any point in time. I see you. Are you using it right now, Mary Pat?
I was, yes. I feel so much better.
Right.
Yeah,
And
no,
it's
really,
like
I do. Yeah.
and instantaneously you're like, "Ah," and you've reset
You can feel the shoulders come down.
Yeah, and it's so simple.
Yeah.
Yet
We
we we forget it exists when we're in a triggered state.
Yeah, we feel like we have to do, we have to tap dance or something to get ourselves back into, a better state. But breathing, when we do trigger training in the Humanized Leader system, and I say to people, pick your strategy, and the best strategy is to breathe. So the box breathing takes it to another level. So I'm really glad you talked about that.
We'll return to my conversation with Mary Pat after a word from our sponsors. Do you love running on EOS? Try Streti, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Streti free at streti.com. That's STRETY.com. Streti, the EOS platform people love. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the entrepreneurial toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. And now back to my conversation with Mary Pat. All right, so this seems like a good place to interject with the question that I always ask my guests, which is if you were to get a tattoo somewhere on your body, like say you're open to that idea, getting a tattoo, what would your tattoo be and where would it be located?
My son has a tattoo that he designed and I love, and it would be a four-leaf clover, a shamrock, a four-leaf clover, and it would be down on my ankle.
Ah,
And not because I want to be like Riley, which I always do because Riley's wonderful, but it's just a symbol of hope and, opportunity and luck and, living a big life. So, yeah, that's what I would do. How about you? Did you reveal your tattoo yet?
I don't have one. The joke is that I have a fear of commitment, so I don't know that I'll and that's I've been married for 32 years, so I don't think I have a fear of commitment, but
Yeah.
there's something about the permanency, I think, of but all my kids are artists, and so like whose art would I put on, and you've got yours chosen. My daughter actually does have a shamrock on her ankle.
Well, she
Erin.
and Riley, they might know each other, Aaron and
Yeah.
Riley. Yeah.
We had a theme, right? So with our Irish named kids. Well, Mary Pat, it's been so lovely talking to
Thank
you,
you.
and I've missed you, and let's definitely get lunch again soon, and not in the
Same.
metaphorical sense, but really
No.
let's get a date on the calendar. It would be great.
Yeah. We actually live in the same city, everybody, so we're lucky that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't for a couple months we didn't, but we do now. So
Yeah.
it's great. I have just loved this conversation. Thank you. It's so easy to talk to you
Oh,
and how lucky your listeners are to have this resource. So thank you in your wonderful, curious, funny way to come up with a concept like this because it's just a really cool concept and I think people are going to learn a lot. So thank you for letting me be a part of the learning and the sharing.
yeah, and thanks for sharing your story. As
Mhm.
always, it's not easy to come on the podcast with these stories, so I really appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable.
Thanks.
Many thanks to Mary Pat Knight for helping us all learn how to be a more humanized leader. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who need to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you again next week.